"Never go to the property, Ethan. Promise me." Those words, spoken with uncharacteristic intensity, were among the few demands my wife Elara ever made during our 24 years of marriage. An African-American man, I had always respected her wishes, even when curiosity gnawed at me during those rare moments when she'd mentioned her Canadian childhood on a property she left behind. But now, Elara was gone, taken by a heart attack that no one, not even me, a college history professor, had seen coming. After 24 years of marriage, I had become a widower at 48, with a bitter son and a hollow space in my chest where certainty used to live. Mr. Thompson, the voice of Elara's attorney, pulled me from my thoughts. We sat in his wood-paneled office 2 weeks after the funeral, the finality of death reduced to paperwork and signatures. "There's one more item." He slid a small box across his desk. Inside lay an antique brass key attached to a maple leaf keychain and a sealed envelope with my name written in Elara's precise handwriting. "What is this?" I asked, turning the heavy key in my palm. "Your wife purchased a property in Alberta, Canada 3 years ago. According to her instructions, you were only to be informed of its existence after her passing." Mr. Thompson adjusted his glasses. "The deed has been transferred to your name. All taxes are paid for the next 5 years. A property in Canada." I struggled to process this information. Elara didn't own any property outside of our home. "It's called Maple Creek Farm. Apparently, it was her childhood home, though the deed shows it changed hands several times before she repurchased it. The farm, the place she'd forbidden me to visit, the place that had caused her gentle face to harden whenever it was mentioned. Mr. Thompson, there's something else you should know." He lowered his voice. "The property has become quite valuable recently. There have already been inquiries about its availability." "Valuable? It's a farm." "Yes, but according to my information, significant oil deposits were discovered in the region about 18 months ago. Your wife declined multiple offers from energy companies." My head spun with questions. Elara had never mentioned oil money or any property purchase. We'd lived comfortably on my professor's salary and her income as an engineer, but we were hardly wealthy. How had she afforded to buy a farm, and why keep it secret from me? I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. "My dearest Ethan, if you're reading this, then I've left you too soon. I'm sorry. There's so much I should have told you, but couldn't bring myself to face. The farm is yours now. I've spent the last 3 years transforming it from the broken place of my childhood into something beautiful, something worthy of you. I know I made you promise never to go there. I'm releasing you from that promise. In fact, I'm asking you to go just once before you decide what to do with it. On the main house's desk is a laptop. The password is the date we met, followed by your mother's maiden name, Sterling. I love you, Ethan, more than you'll ever know. Elara." I clutched the letter to my chest, tears blurring my vision. Even from beyond the grave, Elara was full of surprises. "I need to see this place," I said finally. "Of course," Mr. Thompson nodded. "But I should warn you, Elara's family in Canada has contested the will. Her brothers claim she was not mentally competent when she repurchased the family property." "That's ridiculous. Elara was the most rational person I've ever known." "Nevertheless, they filed legal objections. Given the property's newfound value, it might get complicated." I tucked the key into my pocket, a strange determination settling over me. "I'm going to Canada, Mr. Thompson, today." 48 hours later, after hastily booked flights and a long drive through the Alberta countryside, I found myself standing before imposing wooden gates marked Maple Creek Farm in wrought iron. Beyond stretched a property far larger and more impressive than I had imagined, rolling hill stands of maple trees turning gold with autumn, and in the distance a large farmhouse and several outbuildings all freshly painted. This was no broken-down family farm. This was an estate. The key turned smoothly in the gate's lock. As I drove up the winding gravel driveway, my heart pounded with anticipation and apprehension. What secrets had Elara kept here? What part of herself had she hidden from me for all these years? The farmhouse was a stunning two-story structure with a wide porch and large windows. Nothing about it suggested the pain Elara had always associated with her childhood home. This place had been loved, restored, reimagined. My hand shook as I inserted the key into the front door. The lock clicked, the door swung open, and I stepped across the threshold into my wife's secret world. What I saw inside made me gasp, my knees weakening as I gripped the doorframe for support. The entryway opened into a soaring great room with exposed beams and a stone fireplace. But it wasn't the architecture that stole my breath. It was the gallery of rare historical artifacts and fine art, not snapshots. But everywhere I looked, exquisite first editions, original manuscripts, and detailed prints capturing the history and grace of African-American scholars and activists from the Civil Rights era, original signed lithographs, framed in simple black frames. My lifelong passion, the one indulgence Elara had always supported but never quite understood, surrounded me in a gallery dedicated to my greatest love. And there, on a desk by the window, overlooking endless pastures, sat a silver laptop with a single red rose laid across its closed lid. Before I could take another step, the crunch of tires on gravel announced another arrival. Through the front window, I watched a black SUV pull up behind my rental car. 3 men emerged, all bearing the unmistakable McIntyre features that Elara had carried. Tall frames, dark hair, strong jawlines. The McIntyre brothers had arrived, and from their grim expressions, they hadn't come to welcome the widower to Canada. The men approached the house with the confident stride of people who believed they belonged there. I quickly closed and locked the front door, my heart racing. Through the side window, I watched them pause on the porch, conferring among themselves before the oldest, a silver-haired version of Elara, with harder eyes rapped sharply on the door. "Mr. Sterling, we know you're in there. We should talk." His voice carried the same Canadian accent that had softened Elara's speech when she was tired or upset. I remained silent, backing away from the door. Elara's warning about her family had always been vague but emphatic. Now faced with their unexpected arrival, instinct told me to be cautious. The knocking came again, more insistent. "Ethan, I'm Silas McIntyre, Elara's older brother. These are our brothers Asher and Malcolm. We're here about the farm." Of course they were. They weren't here about Elara or to meet the husband their sister had loved for 24 years. They were here about the suddenly valuable property. I glanced at the laptop on the desk. Whatever answers I needed might be there, not with the strangers on the porch. Ignoring the increasingly aggressive knocking, I moved to the desk, opened the computer, and entered the password 051519998 Sterling. The screen came to life immediately, opening to a folder labeled for Ethan. Inside were hundreds of video files, each named with a date starting from 2 weeks ago, the day after her funeral, and extending a full year into the future. With trembling fingers, I clicked the first one. Elara's face filled the screen, not the thin, pale version from her final months, but healthy, vibrant, clearly recorded some time ago. She smiled directly into the camera, that crooked grin that had always made my heart skip. "Hello, my love. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you've come to the farm despite my years of making you promise not to." She chuckled softly. "I should have known you wouldn't be able to resist, especially after Thompson told you about it." A lump formed in my throat. Even now, she knew me so well. "I've made a video for every day of your first year without me. 1 year of me keeping you company while you grieve. 1 year of explaining everything I should have told you while I was alive." She looked down briefly, then back at the camera with determination, starting with why I bought back the farm I swore I'd never set foot on again. The knocking outside had stopped. Through the window, I could see the men returning to their vehicle, retrieving documents, conferring with stern expressions. Elara continued. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a heart condition I inherited from my father. The doctors gave me 2 to 5 years. I chose not to tell you or Julian. I didn't want pity, and I didn't want our final years overshadowed by death. Her eyes softened. I wanted to live fully with you until the end, not slowly die in front of you. Shock and anger surged through me. She'd hidden her diagnosis, made medical decisions without me, denied me the chance to prepare to cherish our final moments knowingly. "I know you're angry right now," she said, as if reading my thoughts. "You have every right to be, but I hope you'll understand that I made this choice out of love, not deception." The men outside were making phone calls, now pacing the gravel drive with the frustrated energy of thwarted entitlement. When I got my diagnosis, I decided to use whatever time I had left to create something meaningful for you. You always loved researching African American history and collecting first editions, always talked about having a space someday where you could study and archive. So I found the last place anyone would expect me to go, the farm I'd fled at 18, vowing never to return. She leaned closer to the camera. "What my brothers don't know is that I legally bought the farm from our father before he died. The old man was broke after years of failed schemes, drinking away the family money. He sold it to me for a fraction of its worth, desperate for cash, swearing me to secrecy from my brothers who still thought they would inherit it someday. This explained the legal challenge. They believed they had rights to property that Elara had legitimately purchased. The farm was in ruins when I bought it, Ethan, just like when I was a kid. But this time, I had the resources to transform it. Every business trip in the last 3 years, I was here overseeing renovations, building something for you." Outside, the brothers had approached the door again. This time, the oldest, Silas, held a document against the window for me to see, a court order of some kind. "My brothers will come for it," Elara continued in the video, her expression hardening. "They never wanted the farm until last year when oil was discovered in the region. Suddenly, the worthless property they'd mocked me for buying was valuable. They'll try everything to take it from you." One of the brothers was on the phone again, his expression triumphant as he ended the call. "In the bottom drawer of this desk is a blue folder with every legal document you need. The farm is unquestionably yours. I made sure of it." Elara's face softened again. "But Ethan, whether you keep it or sell it is entirely your choice. I built this place for you, filled it with beauty for you, but I don't want it to become a burden." A vehicle was coming up the driveway, a police cruiser with Royal Canadian Mounted Police markings. The brothers watched its approach with satisfied expressions. "One last thing," Elara said. "In the stables, you'll find 6 horses, all breeds you've admired over the years. The staff I've hired will continue caring for them whether you're here or not. They're my last gift to you, along with the means to enjoy them." The video ended, freezing on Elara's smiling face, as knocking resumed at the door, more authoritative this time. "Mr. Sterling, RCMP, we need you to open the door, please." With a deep breath, I closed the laptop, retrieved the blue folder from the drawer, and went to face whatever came next. As I reached for the door handle, my phone rang. Julian, our son, calling from home. I hesitated, then answered. "Julian, now's not a good time." "Dad?" His voice was tight with anger. "Why didn't you tell me about Mom's farm or the oil? Her brothers just called me offering a fair settlement if I help them contest the will. What the hell is going on?" So they'd reached out to my son already. The realization ignited something protective and fierce within me. An African-American father determined to shield his son from exploitation. They weren't just coming after me. They were trying to manipulate my grieving son. "I'll explain everything later," I promised, watching the police officer exchange words with the brothers. "But Julian, don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. These men are not our friends." "Dad, if there's money involved—" "This isn't about money," I interrupted, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. "This is about what your mother wanted. Please trust me on this." After a moment of silence, he sighed. "Fine, but call me back as soon as you can." I hung up and opened the door to face a young RCMP officer, flanked by 3 McIntyre men whose expressions ranged from smug to openly hostile. "Mr. Sterling, I'm Constable Wilson. These gentlemen have a court order requesting an inspection of the property as part of an ongoing estate dispute." I smiled calmly, channeling the strength Elara had always admired in me. "Of course, Constable, but first I think you should see these." I held out the blue folder containing Elara's documentation. My wife anticipated this exact situation. The oldest brother, Silas, stepped forward with a dismissive wave. "Family property disputes are complicated, Constable. My brother-in-law is understandably emotional and confused." "Actually," I interrupted, "I'm neither emotional nor confused. I'm a widower, standing on property that legally belongs to me, an African-American man facing 3 strangers who happen to share my late wife's DNA. I turned to the officer, "And I'd appreciate if you'd review these documents before allowing anyone onto my property." The constable took the folder, his expression neutral, as he began examining the contents. The McIntyre brothers exchanged glances, their confidence visibly wavering for the first time. I thought of Elara's video, of the secret she'd kept to spare Julian and me unnecessary pain, of the magnificent gift she created in her final years. Whatever game her brothers were playing, I was determined not to lose the last tangible expression of my wife's love without a fight. The constable looked up from the documents. His expression changed. "These appear to be in order, Mr. Sterling. A clear deed transfer, properly notarized statements, even certified bank records of the original purchase." He turned to the brothers. "Gentlemen, I don't see grounds for forcing an inspection today. This appears to be a matter for the civil courts." Silas's face flushed with anger. "This is outrageous. That man has no right." "That man," I interjected calmly, "is Elara McIntyre's husband, and I have every right to be here." As the brothers reluctantly retreated to their vehicle, followed by the apologetic constable, I felt a strange sense of both loss and discovery. The wife I thought I knew completely had kept secrets, some painful, others breathtakingly beautiful. Now I faced a choice: retreat to the safety of my familiar life, or step fully into this unexpected legacy and the battle that came with it. I closed the door, walked back to the desk, and opened the laptop again. Tomorrow's video awaited, and with it, more pieces of the woman I had loved and was only now beginning to fully understand. Outside, the McIntyre brothers might have lost this skirmish, but their expressions as they drove away made one thing abundantly clear: the war for Maple Creek Farm had only just begun. I spent that night in Elara's Know-Our farmhouse, surrounded by the evidence of her secret labor of love. Sleep eluded me, my mind churning with revelations. Elara's hidden illness, the transformed farm, her brother's determination to claim it, and the hundreds of video messages awaiting me on the laptop. At dawn, I explored the property properly for the first time. The main house was a masterpiece of restoration, blending original farmhouse elements with modern comforts. Every room reflected thoughtful consideration of my tastes, from the library filled with first editions of my favorite African-American history novels to the sunroom overlooking the eastern pastures, perfect for morning coffee. But it was the stables that truly took my breath away. As promised, in Elara's video, 6 magnificent horses occupied the spotless stalls: an Andalusian, a Frisian, 2 quarter horses, a thoroughbred, and a gentle Appaloosa that nickered softly when I approached. "Good morning, sir." The voice startled me. A man in his early 60s emerged from the tack room, wiping his hands on a cloth. "I'm Ellis. Your wife hired me to manage the stables." "Ethan Sterling," I replied, extending my hand, "though I suspect you already knew that." He nodded, a gentle smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Mrs. McIntyre spoke of you often during her visits, said you had a natural way with horses that she never managed to acquire." "You knew my wife well." Ellis hesitated. "As well as she allowed anyone to know her, I suppose. She was here every month for the past 3 years, overseeing everything personally. Never delegated a decision if she could make it herself." That sounded like Elara, methodical, hands-on, attentive to detail. "The black Frisian there?" Ellis continued, nodding toward a magnificent stallion watching us with intelligent eyes. "That's Midnight. Your wife spent months tracking him down specifically, said he reminded her of a horse in a painting you loved." My heart clenched. The Stubbs painting of a black horse against a stormy sky. I'd admired it at a museum 20 years ago, and Elara had remembered. Did she? I hesitated, unsure how to frame the question. Did my wife ever mention her health to you? A shadow crossed Ellis's weathered face. Not directly, but these last 6 months she pushed harder, worked longer hours, added more features to the property, like a woman racing against a clock only she could see. The confirmation stung, but also explained the driven quality I'd sensed in Elara during her final months. I'd attributed it to work stress, never imagining she was creating all this while knowing her time was limited. Her brothers were here yesterday, I said, watching Ellis's reaction carefully. His expression hardened. They've been circling since the oil was discovered on neighboring properties, suddenly very interested in the family farm they hadn't visited in decades. What can you tell me about them? Ellis secured a stall door before answering. Silas is the oldest, runs some investment firm in Toronto, always acted like he was doing Elara a favor by acknowledging her. Asher's the middle one, lawyer, slick talker, and Malcolm's the youngest, followed Silas into finance, always in his shadow. In their relationship with Elara, strained, doesn't begin to cover it. From what I gathered, they tormented her as a child. City boys who visited the farm reluctantly looking down on her for staying to help your father-in-law run the place. Ellis shook his head. When Elara returned to buy the property, they mocked her for wasting money on worthless land, right up until the Petersons struck oil 2 properties over. This aligned with the fragments Elara had shared over the years, her difficult childhood, her escape to the United States for college, her reluctance to discuss her Canadian family. They'll be back, I said, more to myself than to Ellis. Count on it. He nodded grimly. But Mrs. McIntyre prepared for that. She was always 3 steps ahead. Back at the house, I forced myself to eat breakfast before opening the laptop for today's video. Elara appeared on screen, seated in what I now recognized as the farm's library. Good morning, my love. I hope you slept well in our new home. She smiled that crooked smile I missed with physical intensity. Today, I want to show you something special. The camera moved as she carried it through the house, down a hallway I hadn't explored, stopping at a locked door. This room is for you alone. The key is in the top drawer of the bedside table, the antique silver one with the music note engraving. I paused. The video went to the master bedroom and found the key exactly where she described. Retracing Elara's path from the video, I located the door unassuming, situated at the end of the east wing. The key turned smoothly in the lock. I pushed the door open and gasped. A fully equipped historical research and archival studio filled the large corner room, bathed in perfect northern light from floor-to-ceiling windows. Antique map cases, microfiche readers, and archival tools, everything a historian or researcher could desire, arranged with loving precision. I hadn't seriously dedicated myself to my archival work in 20 years. After college, I'd set aside my rare document collecting aspirations to teach, to help support us, while Elara built her engineering career to raise Julian. Over the years, someday had become a distant dream, then eventually a bittersweet memory of a path not taken. The video continued, Elara's voice pulling me back to the laptop I'd carried with me. You gave up so much for us, Ethan. Your research was the first sacrifice. Though you never complained, I always promised myself I'd give it back to you someday. Tears blurred my vision as I surveyed the studio. The professional-grade supplies, the historical texts stacked neatly on shelves, the north-facing windows that would provide perfect, consistent light. There's one more thing, Elara continued. Check the cabinet below the window seat. I crossed to the cushioned window seat that overlooked the eastern pasture, now golden in the morning light. Below it, built into the wall, was a cabinet I might have missed, if not directed to it. Inside lay a flat archival box. With trembling hands, I lifted the lid, then sank to my knees in shock. My research notes, dozens of documents. All the rare manuscripts and archival prints I collected in college, the pieces I thought had been lost in our moves over the years. Elara had preserved them, protected them, kept them safe for 2 decades, until she could return them to me in this perfect space. On top lay a small bronze bust of George Washington Carver. I recognized immediately my final project before graduation, a bust of a young African-American man looking forward, eyes alight with possibilities. Elara had asked to keep it the day I completed it. Tucked beside it was a handwritten note in her precise script. "He's still in there, Ethan, the man who researched with such passion and vision. I've given you the space. The rest is up to you." I clutched the note to my chest, overwhelmed by love and loss in equal measure. Elara had seen me, truly seen me in ways I hadn't allowed myself to be seen in years. The sound of vehicles on the graveled driveway pulled me from this emotional moment. Moving to the studio window, I watched two cars approach the now familiar black SUV of the McIntyre brothers, and behind it, a sleek silver Mercedes I recognized instantly. Julian had arrived, and from the way he emerged from his car and strode confidently toward the brothers, it appeared they had already begun working on him. My son, Elara's son, with his mother's dark hair and my African-American father's stubborn chin, was smiling and shaking hands with the uncles he'd never met. Whatever fragile peace I'd found in Elara's posthumous gifts evaporated in the face of this new complication. The battle for Maple Creek Farm had just become significantly more personal. I watched from the window as Julian exchanged friendly greetings with his uncles, his body language open and receptive. At 27, our son had his mother's analytical mind and my determination, but lacked Elara's patience and my caution. He had always been quick to form opinions, slow to revise them. My phone buzzed with a text from him, arrived with Uncle Silas and the others. "Coming in now." "We need to talk, Uncle Silas." They'd known each other less than a day, and already he was claiming family connection. I tucked Elara's note into my pocket, locked the studio behind me, and went to face this new alliance. They entered without knocking. "Dad." Julian embraced me briefly, then stepped back, his eyes darting around the impressive entryway. "This place is unbelievable. Why didn't Mom ever tell us about it?" Before I could answer, Silas stepped forward, his resemblance to Elara painfully sharp in the morning light. "Ethan, I believe we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. We were surprised by your sudden appearance, just as you were surprised by ours." His conciliatory tone didn't match the calculating look in his eyes. Beside him, Asher and Malcolm maintained carefully neutral expressions, though I noticed Asher clutching a leather portfolio that undoubtedly contained legal documents. "Julian," I said, ignoring Silas completely. "I thought we agreed you wouldn't engage with your mother's brothers until we'd had a chance to talk." He flushed slightly. "They called again this morning with a very reasonable proposal. I thought I should at least hear them out in person." His chin lifted defiantly, the same expression he'd worn as a teenager, challenging curfew. "Besides, they're my family, too. Family you didn't know existed until yesterday," I reminded him gently. "Only because Mom kept them from us." He countered, "Just like she kept this whole place secret. Don't you think that's strange? What else was she hiding?" The question hit uncomfortably close to the revelations in Elara's videos. She had hidden her illness, her property purchase, her reclamation of my archival dreams for me. But her reasons had been born of love, not deception. "Your mother had complicated relationships with her brothers," I said carefully. "She had reasons for the distance she maintained." Silas gave a dismissive wave. "Ancient history siblings clash, especially in difficult families like ours. What matters now is moving forward together." "Exactly." Julian agreed with the earnestness of someone who believed they were being perfectly reasonable. "Uncle Silas has explained everything. This farm has been in the McIntyre family for generations. Mom bought it from Grandpa McIntyre, but it was always meant to be shared among the brothers eventually." I suppressed a sigh. They'd been working on him for less than a day, and already he was parroting their version of events. "And the sudden interest in the property wouldn't have anything to do with the oil discovery?" I asked mildly. Asher stepped forward, opening his portfolio. "The mineral rights situation is just one aspect of the complex legal picture. We've prepared a fair settlement offer that honors Elara's wishes while acknowledging the McIntyre family's historic claim to the property. We're prepared to be very generous," Silas added, placing an avuncular hand on Julian's shoulder. "A 1/3 share to you, Ethan, 1/3 to Julian, and 1/3 split among us brothers. Everyone wins." Julian looked at me expectantly, clearly already sold on the proposal. "It makes sense, Dad. We don't need this huge place. We could sell it all, walk away with millions, and Mom's family stays intact." "Your mother specifically left this property to me," I said, meeting Silas's gaze steadily. "Not to you, not to her brothers." "Out of confusion and misplaced sentiment," Silas countered smoothly. Elara wasn't thinking clearly in her final years. A flash of anger burned through me, the protective instinct of an African-American father flaring at the disrespect of my deceased wife. My wife was perfectly sound of mind until the day she died. Then why all the secrecy? Malcolm spoke for the first time, his voice softer than his brother's, but no less pointed. Why hide the property purchase from her husband and son? Why the elaborate arrangements with the lawyer? These aren't the actions of a woman thinking rationally. I thought of the videos, the renovated farm, the archival studio. Each element meticulously planned as a final gift. Nothing about it suggested confusion or impaired judgment. "Dad," Julian said, his voice gentler now, "I know this is hard. Mom left you, left both of us, and now we're discovering all these secrets. But this proposal makes financial sense. We'd both be set for life." The door opened behind them, and Ellis appeared, his weathered face concerned. "Everything all right, Mr. Sterling? I saw the vehicles arrive." The brothers turned, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Silas's eyes narrowed. "This is a family matter." "Ellis is my employee," I said firmly. "He's welcome in my home." "Actually," Asher interjected, "his employment status is among the disputed assets pending resolution of our legal claim." Ellis stood his ground. "Mrs. McIntyre hired me personally, made me promise to look after the place and Mr. Sterling if anything happened to her." "We'll be reviewing all staff appointments," Silas said dismissively. I'd heard enough. "I think it's time for you to leave, all of you." I looked pointedly at the brothers, then softened my gaze when it reached Julian. "Except you, of course. You're always welcome to stay." "You're not even considering their offer?" Julian asked, incredulous. "I'll review any written proposal with my own attorney," I replied, "but I won't be pressured in my own home." Silas's mask of conciliation slipped, revealing the hard businessman beneath. "This property is worth tens of millions with the oil rights. We can do this amicably, or we can make things very difficult." "Is that a threat?" I asked, with more calmness than I felt. "A reality check," he corrected. "You're a history professor from Minnesota facing a legal battle against opponents with significantly more resources. Elara may have meant well, but she placed you in an untenable position." I thought of the blue folder with its meticulous documentation, the videos showing Elara's clear-headed planning the transformed property that represented her final act of love. "I believe my wife knew exactly what she was doing," I said quietly. "Now please leave. Julian, you're welcome to stay for lunch if you like." He looked torn, glancing between me and his newly discovered uncles. "I think I'll go with them for now. We have more to discuss." He kissed my cheek quickly. "Think about the offer, Dad. Please." I watched them leave, a hollow feeling expanding in my chest. In just 24 hours, my son had been pulled into the orbit of men Elara had spent her life avoiding. Whatever they were telling him was working. I could see it in his receptive posture, his quick adoption of their perspective. Ellis waited until their vehicles had disappeared down the driveway before speaking. "Mr. Sterling, there's something you should know. Something your wife asked me not to mention unless absolutely necessary." I turned to him, mentally exhausted, but forcing myself to focus. "What is it?" "It's about the true extent of the property and what's really hidden here." He gestured toward the stables. "We should walk. Some things shouldn't be discussed indoors where walls might have ears. As I followed him across the yard, the morning sun illuminated the beautiful farm my wife had created in secret. Whatever revelation awaited me, I was certain of one thing. Elara had anticipated this battle, perhaps even Julian's vulnerability to her brother's manipulation. The question was whether she had prepared me enough to win a fight I never knew was coming. Ellis led me past the main stables toward a weathered barn I hadn't explored yet. Unlike the pristine, renovated structures on the rest of the property, this building retained its original rustic character, deliberately unimproved to appear unimportant. "Your wife was a careful woman," Ellis said, producing an old iron key. "After her brother's first visit last year, she became even more cautious." "They visited before Elara never mentioned that." Ellis nodded grimly. "Showed up unannounced once they caught wind of the oil discovery on neighboring properties. Your wife was here supervising construction of the archival studio. They didn't recognize her at first. She lost weight and was wearing a wide-brimmed hat." The casual mention of Elara's treatment sent a fresh wave of pain through me. While I'd been obliviously teaching college history in Minnesota, my wife had been here sick, creating this sanctuary while fending off her predatory brothers. What happened? "She observed them from a distance, then left without revealing herself. That night, she made changes to the property plans." Ellis unlocked the barn door, starting with this. The door swung open to reveal an ordinary-looking barn interior, hay bales, old farm equipment, dust motes, dancing in beams of sunlight filtering through gaps in the walls. Ellis moved confidently to the back corner, shifting several bales to expose a trap door set into the dirt floor. "Your wife installed this entrance last winter. The workers thought they were building a root cellar." He pulled the heavy door upward, revealing a sturdy wooden staircase descending into darkness. "After you, Mr. Sterling." Curiosity overcoming apprehension, I followed Ellis down the stairs. At the bottom, he flipped a switch, and lights flickered on, revealing a concrete tunnel stretching forward into the earth. "What is this place? Your wife called it insurance. I call it genius." Ellis gestured for me to follow as he walked the tunnel. "The McIntyre brothers think they know the full extent of the property and its value. They don't." The tunnel extended perhaps 50 yards before opening into a large concrete room, filled with filing cabinets, a desk with computer equipment, and walls covered with maps and documents. "Welcome to Elara's war room," Ellis said, a hint of pride in his voice. Everything she collected about her brothers, their business dealings, and the true value of Maple Creek Farm. I moved to the nearest wall where a detailed survey map was pinned, showing not just the farm, but surrounding properties for miles. Red markings indicated oil deposit locations with handwritten notes about depth, quality, and extraction challenges. "I don't understand," I said, turning to Ellis. "Elara knew about the oil." "Not at first. She bought this place to renovate for you, pure and simple. But about 18 months ago, when Peterson's land showed oil, she hired geologists to survey Maple Creek secretly." Ellis pointed to the map. "They found something unexpected. The largest deposit isn't under the eastern section where everyone's drilling. It's here, under the western acres, that look worthless." I studied the map more carefully, noting the concentration of red markings on the rugged, apparently unusable portion of the property that stretched into the foothills land Silas hadn't even mentioned in his proposed division. "The oil company's surveys missed it because the formation is unusual deeper and shaped differently than they expected," Ellis continued. "Your wife verified it with 3 independent experts swearing them to secrecy. So the property is even more valuable than her brothers realize?" "Exponentially, but that's not all." Ellis moved to a filing cabinet withdrawing a thick folder. "Elara documented decades of questionable business practices by all 3 brothers. Tax evasion, insider trading, misappropriation of client funds, enough evidence to ruin them professionally if it ever came to light." I leafed through the meticulous documentation, recognizing Elara's thorough approach to problem solving. Email printouts, financial records, sworn statements from former employees. She had built an airtight case against her brothers. Why would she collect all this protection? Ellis sat at the desk, gesturing for me to take the other chair. She knew they'd come after the farm when she was gone. She wanted you to have leverage. I thought of Silas's smug confidence, Asher's legal maneuvering, their quick work turning Julian against me. She anticipated everything. Not everything, Ellis said quietly. She didn't expect them to get to your son so quickly. The reminder of Julian's betrayal stung. They're manipulating him with half-truths and promises of wealth and playing on his grief. Ellis added, he lost his mother. Suddenly they're offering a connection to her through shared blood and history. Powerful draw for a young man mourning his mom. He was right. Julian had always been Mommy's boy, sharing Elara's analytical mind and love of puzzles. Her death had left him adrift, vulnerable to anyone offering connection to her. What do I do now? I asked half to myself. That depends on what you want, Ellis replied. You could sell everything, property, oil rights, the whole package, and walk away wealthy, but perhaps forever estranged from your son. You could fight the brothers legally using this leverage, which might win the battle but worsen family wounds. Or what? You could do what your wife always did. Think 3 steps ahead and find the path no one expects. I considered this as I continued examining the war room. On the desk sat a framed photograph I'd never seen before, Elara, as a teenager, standing proudly beside a magnificent chestnut horse, her face alight with an innocent joy I'd rarely glimpsed in the woman I married. That's Phoenix, Ellis said, noticing my focus on the photo. Your wife's horse when she was a girl. The only bright spot in her childhood here, from what she told me. Her brother sold the animal when Elara was away at school, just to hurt her. Apparently, another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Elara's support of my love for horses, despite having no personal interest in them. The 6 magnificent animals in the stable weren't just a gift. They were her reclamation of something precious her brothers had stolen from her. I picked up the photograph, a plan beginning to form in my mind. Ellis, does the laptop with Elara's videos work down here? He nodded. There's a secure Wi-Fi network throughout the property. Your wife made sure of it. Good. I need to watch the next few videos ahead of schedule. Then I need you to arrange a meeting for me. With whom? First my son alone away from his uncles, then my attorney, and finally... I glanced at the wall of evidence Elara had compiled against her brothers. I think I'd like to speak with those oil company representatives who've been making offers on the property. Ellis smiled for the first time since we'd entered the hidden bunker. You're planning something your wife would approve of. I'm planning something worthy of the woman who loved me enough to create all this. I corrected an African-American man finding strength in his wife's legacy, a new determination steadying my voice. And I'm going to need your help. Whatever you need, Ellis promised. Your wife saved my life once years ago, gave me this job when no one else would take a chance on an ex-con trying to rebuild his life. I owe her everything, and by extension, I owe you. This was yet another side of Elara I hadn't known. Her quiet generosity extending beyond our immediate family, changing lives I'd never even heard about. As we left the bunker, carefully concealing the entrance again, I felt a strange sense of connection to my late wife, not the grief that had dominated the past weeks, but a partnership that somehow continued beyond death. She had left me not just a property and material security, but tools and knowledge to forge my own path forward. The McIntyre brothers believed they were facing a naive widower out of his depth. They had no idea what was coming. Over the next 48 hours, I barely slept, fueled instead by determination and the growing clarity of my plan. I watched a week's worth of Elara's videos in a single night, each one revealing more of her strategy and the depth of her foresight. They'll try to divide and conquer, she warned in one recording, as if speaking directly to my current situation. Silas will be the friendly face Asher, the legal threat Malcolm the silent observer, and they'll target Julian. He's their easiest path to destabilizing your position. In another video, she walked through the western section of the property, the supposedly worthless acres her brothers had deliberately excluded from their proposal. "This land looks like nothing, Ethan. Scrubby hills, rocky terrain, difficult access. That's why it's perfect. No one looks closely at what appears valueless." Armed with Elara's insights and my own growing understanding of what I faced, I arranged to meet Julian at a small cafe in the nearest town, 20 minutes from the farm-neutral territory, away from both the McIntyre brothers' influence and the emotional pull of Elara's carefully crafted sanctuary. He arrived 15 minutes late, defensive posture already in place before he even sat down. "I can't stay long. Uncle Silas is taking me to meet the family attorney this afternoon." "Uncle Silas," I repeated mildly. "You've become quite close in 3 days." He flushed. "They've been nothing but kind and welcoming, which is more than I can say for you. You're treating them like enemies instead of Mom's family." I sipped my coffee, choosing my next words carefully. "Do you remember that art history course you took sophomore year? The professor who talked about perspective, how where you stand completely changes what you see. What does that have to do with anything? You've only heard their perspective on this situation. I'm asking you to consider there might be another view, your mother's." "Mom's dead," he said bluntly, pain flashing across his features. "And she obviously didn't trust either of us enough to tell us about this place while she was alive." I reached into my bag and withdrew a tablet. "Actually, she left something for both of us." "What is that? Your mother made videos, Julian, hundreds of them. Messages to guide us after she was gone." I turned the tablet to face him, queuing up the specific video Elara had labeled, "For Julian when he needs it." His face paled. "She made videos?" "She knew she was dying," I said softly, finally sharing the truth. "She was diagnosed 3 years ago with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. She chose not to tell us. Wanted to spare us watching her decline." "That's impossible. She would have told me." But uncertainty had crept into his voice. "Watch the video, Julian. Hear it from her." With trembling fingers, he pressed play. Elara's face appeared healthy, vibrant, her eyes crinkling with the smile that was so uniquely hers. "Hello, my brilliant boy. If you're watching this, then I'm gone. And knowing you, you're probably angry about all the secrets I kept." She chuckled softly. "You never did like being kept in the dark about anything, even as a toddler." Tears welled in Julian's eyes as his mother continued, "I should have told you I was sick, should have given you time to prepare to ask all those questions you're so good at asking. But I was selfish. I wanted our last years together to be normal, not overshadowed by my diagnosis. I hope someday you'll forgive me for that choice." Elara shifted, leaning closer to the camera. "But there's something else you need to know. Something about my brothers that I've never shared with you. Our estrangement wasn't some petty family squabble. Julian, they embezzled my portion of our father's estate when I was 19, used my name on fraudulent documents while I was away at college. When I discovered it and threatened to expose them, they threatened to implicate me as a willing participant." Julian's hand covered his mouth, his eyes never leaving the screen. "I left Canada, changed my name slightly from McIntyre to Elara, and started over in Minnesota. Met your father, built a life, raised you. It was more than enough." Her expression hardened. "But my brothers never changed. Whatever they're telling you now, remember this. They've wanted control of the family property for decades, not out of sentiment, but pure greed, and they'll use anyone, including my son, to get it." The video ended freezing on Elara's concerned face. Julian sat motionless, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. "She was protecting us," he whispered finally, "all this time for more than just her illness." I confirmed gently. "Your uncles aren't the family connection they're pretending to be. They're opportunists who see you as their easiest path to what they want." He wiped his tears, anger replacing grief in his expression. "They've been lying to me, haven't they? About everything?" "Not everything. The farm is worth millions. That part is true. But they haven't told you about the western section they conveniently excluded from their proposal, or the true extent of the oil deposits there. Understanding dawned in his eyes. They're trying to cheat us. Us, I repeated, hope flickering. Does that mean you're back on my side? Dad, I never left your side. He looked down ashamed. I wanted to feel connected to Mom through her family. They had stories about her as a kid, photos I'd never seen. I understand, I assured him, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. Grief makes us vulnerable in ways we can't anticipate, but now we need to be smarter than they are. Together. Julian straightened his expression, shifting from devastation to determination, so like his mother that my heart ached. What's the plan? I smiled, feeling the first real sense of confidence since this ordeal began. First, we're meeting my attorney this evening. Not the family attorney your uncles want to use, but someone recommended by Elara's lawyer in Minnesota. Then tomorrow, we have an appointment with Western Plains Energy, the oil company. Why? Because knowledge is leverage, and right now we know something your uncles don't exactly, where the oil is and how much there really is. I showed him the geological surveys from Elara's war room. They think they're dealing with an uninformed widower and a naive nephew. Time to show them exactly who they're really facing. For the first time since Elara's death, Julian laughed a sound of genuine amusement. Mom always said you were the smartest person she'd ever met. That underneath that quiet college professor was a tactical genius who could outthink anyone if properly motivated. Did she really say that? I asked, surprised. All the time. He smiled, wiping away the last of his tears. She also said that the biggest mistake anyone could make was underestimating Ethan Sterling. As we left the cafe together, I felt a shift in the dynamic of this battle. The McIntyre brothers had unwittingly united us instead of dividing us. They had no idea that their apparent early success with Julian had only set the stage for their ultimate defeat. Later that evening, with Julian beside me, I laid out my complete plan to the attorney Elara had selected for this exact scenario. His expression moved from professional interest to undisguised admiration as he grasped the full scope of what I proposed. "Mr. Sterling," he said finally, "your wife said you would surprise me with your strategic thinking. She was right." "My wife," I replied, "was right about a great many things, including, it seemed, her belief in my ability to not just survive her death, but to emerge stronger from the crucible of grief and betrayal." The McIntyre brothers arrived at Maple Creek Farm exactly when I expected, 10:00 a.m. sharp. 3 days after my meeting with Julian, their black SUV crunched up the gravel driveway with the confidence of men who believed victory was merely a formality. Behind them followed a silver Mercedes I didn't recognize, likely their attorney or financial advisor. I watched from the great room window, dressed not in the casual clothes they'd seen previously, but in a tailored suit I'd purchased specifically for this meeting. Appearances matter when staging a coup, and I intended to present myself not as a grieving widower, but as the formidable opponent Elara had always known me to be. "They're here," I called to Julian, who emerged from the kitchen looking equally professional in a dark blue suit, his mother's watch, one of his most treasured possessions, prominently displayed on his wrist. "Ready?" he asked, nervousness and determination warring in his expression. "Completely," I squeezed his hand. "Remember, let them talk themselves into a corner first." Ellis appeared from the back of the house. The others arrived through the service entrance. "They're set up in the dining room as you requested." I nodded appreciation. Perfect timing. The doorbell rang, and Ellis moved to answer it with the practiced deference of a caretaker who knew his role in this carefully choreographed performance. "Good morning, gentlemen," I heard him greet them. "Mr. Sterling and Mr. Julian are expecting you. This way, please." They entered with the easy entitlement of men accustomed to controlling rooms. Silas led, followed by Asher with his ever-present legal portfolio, and Malcolm bringing up the rear. Behind them walked a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who radiated corporate authority. "Ethan," Silas nodded, his smile not reaching his eyes, "we appreciate you agreeing to this meeting. This is Harrison Wells, CEO of Northern Extraction. We thought it might be productive to have an industry expert join our discussion about the property's potential. So they'd brought an oil executive to intimidate me with technical jargon and market valuations." "Predictable. How thoughtful," I replied pleasantly. "I've had the dining room prepared for our meeting. Shall we—" I led them through the house, noting their assessing glances at the renovations Elara had completed. In the formal dining room, a large table had been set with documents at each place, water carafes and coffee service, the picture of professional preparation. "Please sit," I gestured. "I believe we have much to discuss." As they settled into their chairs, expressions of confidence still firmly in place, I remained standing at the head of the table. "Before we begin," I said, "I want to thank you for your previous proposal. It was educational." Silas's smile widened, clearly interpreting my comment as submission. "We're pleased you've had time to consider our offer. With Mr. Wells' expertise, we can discuss the most advantageous arrangement for dividing the property's assets." "Yes, division," I mused, picking up a remote control from the table. "That's precisely what I'd like to discuss." I pressed a button, and a hidden screen descended from the ceiling at the far end of the room. The brothers exchanged surprised glances. Clearly, they hadn't expected this level of preparation. "If you'll direct your attention to the presentation," I continued, clicking the remote again. A detailed map of Maple Creek Farm appeared on the screen, showing property boundaries, topographical features, and geological formations. "This is the complete survey of Maple Creek," I explained. "All 200 acres, not just the eastern 800 acres mentioned in your proposal." Asher shifted uncomfortably. "The western section is undevelopable rocky terrain. We excluded it for simplicity's sake." "How considerate," I smiled, "except for one small detail." Another click, and the map overlaid with oil deposit locations. The complete geological survey from Elara's war room, showing the massive reserve beneath the worthless western acres. Harrison Wells straightened in his chair, professional masks slipping, as he leaned forward to study the projection with sudden, intense interest. "As you can see," I continued calmly, "the primary oil deposit extends predominantly beneath the western section, the acres you so generously offered to exclude from our fair division." Silas's face flushed. "These surveys are unreliable. Northern Extraction's analysis indicates—" "Actually," interrupted a new voice as the connecting door opened, "those surveys have been verified by 3 independent geological teams." The McIntyre brothers turned in shock as Thomas Reeves, CEO of Western Plains Energy, Northern Extraction's primary competitor, entered the room, followed by my attorney and 2 individuals in business attire. "What is this?" Silas demanded, half rising from his chair. "This," I said pleasantly, "is a meeting about the true value and future of Maple Creek Farm. Mr. Reeves has expressed significant interest in the property's potential, particularly after reviewing the complete geological data my wife compiled." Harrison Wells shot a betrayed glance at the McIntyre brothers. "You told me you had exclusive negotiating rights to this property." "They don't," my attorney interjected smoothly, placing additional documents on the table. "Mr. Sterling holds clear, uncontested title to the entire property, including all mineral rights. The documents you've been shown by the McIntyre brothers have no legal standing whatsoever." Silas slammed his hand on the table. "This property has been in the McIntyre family for generations. Elara had a moral obligation." "Moral obligations?" Julian spoke for the first time, his voice steady, despite his white-knuckled grip on his water glass. "Like the moral obligation you had to my mother when you stole her inheritance or forged her signature on loan documents or threatened to implicate her in your financial crimes if she exposed you." The brothers froze, color draining from their faces. "What exactly is he talking about?" Harrison Wells asked, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Perhaps these will clarify matters." I said, nodding to my attorney who distributed sealed envelopes to everyone at the table. Copies of documentation my wife preserved regarding certain historical transactions involving McIntyre family assets. I believe the statute of limitations has expired on some of these matters, but the Canadian financial regulatory authorities might still find others quite interesting. Asher opened his envelope, scanning the contents with increasing alarm. "These are private family matters," he sputtered, "completely irrelevant to the current discussion." On the contrary, I countered, finally taking my seat at the head of the table. "They establish a pattern of fraudulent behavior that directly impacts your credibility in these negotiations. Behavior that continued when you deliberately misled Mr. Wells about your standing to negotiate for this property." The room fell silent as the McIntyre brothers realized the completeness of their exposure. Elara had documented everything: their historical crimes against her, their recent manipulations, their attempts to seize valuable assets while appearing generous. "What do you want?" Silas finally asked, his confident facade crumbling. "I want you to leave Maple Creek Farm and never return," I stated simply. "I want you to cease all attempts to contest my ownership or manipulate my son. In exchange, these documents remain private, viewable only by the people in this room." Harrison Wells stood abruptly. "I believe my company's involvement in this matter has been based on incomplete and potentially fraudulent information. If you'll excuse me, Mr. Sterling, I'll be in touch directly regarding any future discussions of mineral rights." He shot a disgusted look at the brothers before exiting. Silas's expression hardened as he watched his oil company ally depart. "You have no idea what you're doing, Ethan. The extraction costs for the western section are prohibitive. The logistics alone—" "Actually," Thomas Reeves interjected, "Western Plains has developed new extraction technology, specifically suited to these geological formations. We're prepared to make Mr. Sterling an offer that acknowledges both the challenges and the exceptional potential of this property." As the meeting continued, transforming from the McIntyre brothers' planned takeover into my carefully orchestrated counteroffensive, I caught Julian's eye across the table. His slight smile conveyed everything: pride, vindication, and the bittersweet acknowledgment that Elara had prepared us for this moment, even from beyond the grave. By the time the McIntyre brothers departed 2 hours later, defeated, exposed, and legally bound by the settlement agreement, my attorney had prepared in advance the future of Maple Creek Farm had been secured exactly as Elara had envisioned, not divided among greedy relatives, not sold to the highest bidder, but preserved as a legacy for the family she had chosen and loved, Julian and me. As their vehicles disappeared down the driveway, Ellis appeared at my side. "Your wife would be proud," he said quietly. "You outmaneuvered them exactly as she believed you would." I watched the dust settle on the driveway, a strange mix of emotions washing through me: triumph tinged with grief, strength emerging from vulnerability. "We're not finished yet," I replied, thinking of the video still waiting on Elara's laptop, the future stretching before us. This was just the first battle, but it was a battle we had decisively won, using weapons Elara had meticulously prepared and the strength she had always seen in me, even when I couldn't see it in myself. The weeks following the McIntyre brothers' defeat passed in a blur of practical matters: legal documents, finalizing our settlement agreement, meetings with Western Plains Energy to structure a mutually beneficial extraction arrangement, and careful inventory of everything Elara had created at Maple Creek Farm. Julian stayed with me through it all, his initial resentment about his mother's secrets transforming into appreciation for her foresight. We established a routine of watching her daily videos together each morning, both of us finding comfort and guidance in her posthumous presence. "Did you have any idea," Julian asked one evening as we sat on the porch, watching the sun set behind the western hills that contained our newfound wealth, "any suspicion at all that Mom was sick or planning all this?" I considered the question, carefully searching my memories for missed signals. There were small things that make sense in retrospect. Her insistence on updating our wills 3 years ago. The way she'd sometimes look at us at dinner, almost memorizing our faces. Her sudden interest in taking photos of ordinary moments. I thought she was just going through a midlife appreciation phase, Julian said, smiling sadly. In a way, she was just not for the reasons we assumed. I sipped my tea, remembering the biggest change. She stopped putting things off. Your mother was always a someday person about personal matters. Someday we'd take that trip to Europe. Someday she'd learn to sail. Someday we'd renovate the kitchen. Then suddenly she started doing things rather than talking about them. Like buying this place. Julian nodded. Creating something lasting. Exactly. I attributed it to her finally feeling financially secure enough to indulge some dreams. I shook my head, still coming to terms with the magnitude of what she'd concealed. I never imagined she was racing against time creating a legacy because she knew she wouldn't be here to see it mature. The Western Plains Energy representatives had been shocked when I had outlined my conditions for their access to the oil beneath our property. Rather than selling the mineral rights outright for a lump sum as most landowners did, I had insisted on a structured arrangement that prioritized environmental protection, employed sustainable extraction methods, and established a substantial trust for restoration after the oil was depleted. Mr. Sterling, their lead negotiator, had said, these terms are highly unusual in the industry. Then perhaps the industry needs more unusual terms, I had replied, channeling Elara's quiet confidence. The oil has been there for millions of years. It can stay there until we agree on responsible methods to retrieve it. To my surprise, Thomas Reeves, the CEO, had been intrigued rather than deterred by my approach. Your wife mentioned you were an architectural history major before switching to education, he'd noted. She said you'd insist on doing this right, not just profitably. Another piece of Elara's planning revealed. She'd clearly been in communication with select industry leaders, laying groundwork for negotiations she knew would follow her death. 1 month after claiming my inheritance, I stood in the archival studio Elara had created, sunlight streaming through the north-facing windows, illuminating a blank canvas on the easel. After decades away from archiving, I had finally picked up a tool again, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. Today's subject waited patiently in the paddock visible through the studio windows. Midnight, the magnificent Frisian stallion Elara had purchased because he reminded her of a painting I'd admired 20 years earlier. Ellis had been teaching me to ride again, my middle-aged body protesting then adapting to the forgotten rhythms of horsemanship. Dad. Julian appeared in the doorway, laptop in hand. Today's video is different. I think you should see it alone. I sat down my archiving tool, curious. We had fallen into the routine of watching Elara's daily messages together over breakfast, finding comfort in the shared experience. Different how? It's marked specifically for month 2, day 15. She titled it, When Ethan Starts Archiving Again. He handed me the computer with a gentle smile. She knew you would eventually. Alone in the studio, surrounded by the tools of a passion I was rediscovering, I opened the laptop and pressed play. Elara appeared seated in this very room before any of the archival supplies had been installed, the space bare except for the magnificent windows. Hello, my love. She began, her smile warm and intimate. If you're watching this, you found your way back to your research, back to the passion you set aside for our family all those years ago. I touched the screen, gently, tears welling in my eyes. I've been thinking a lot about legacy, she continued. What we leave behind, what marks we make on the world. Most people think of legacy in terms of children or wealth or accomplishment, but there's another kind of legacy, the enabling of possibility in those we love. She gestured to the empty room around her. This space isn't finished yet, but in my mind, I can see it completed, filled with light and color and your archival prints. I imagine you standing before an easel, tool in hand, finally giving form to the visions you've carried inside you all these years. I glanced at the half-finished bust of Midnight on my work table, struck by how closely it aligned with Elara's imagination. "I've structured everything to give you freedom, Ethan," she continued. "Financial security through the oil rights protection from my brother's interference, a beautiful space to research. But what you do with that freedom, that's your legacy to build, not mine to dictate." She leaned closer to the camera, her expression intense. "The farm, the horses, the archival studio, they're not the inheritance. They're just the tools. The real inheritance is possibility, the chance to become more fully yourself without constraint." I paused the video, overwhelmed by the depth of her understanding. Elara had known me better than I knew myself, had seen the dormant historian still alive within the practical teacher and devoted father I'd become. When I resumed the video, her expression had softened again. "I have one request, though. It's yours to accept or decline. In the storage closet behind this room is a large canvas I commissioned before my diagnosis. It's blank waiting. When you're ready, truly ready, I hope you'll create something for it. Something that captures not just what you see, but what you feel about this place that brought me back to my beginnings and will carry you into your future." The video ended with her familiar sign-off. "Until tomorrow, my love." I sat motionless for several minutes, processing her words. Then, moved by impulse, I went to the storage closet and found exactly what she'd described, an enormous blank canvas, custom-built for the prominent wall in the great room. It was the perfect size to create a statement piece, a focal point for the heart of the home Elara had created. Over the following weeks, as autumn painted the landscape in brilliant hues, I sketched countless drafts, trying to capture the essence of Maple Creek Farm and what it represented. None satisfied me, until one morning, watching Julian ride in Midnight across the eastern meadow. Something clicked. The painting took shape gradually, not a traditional landscape, but a blending of real and metaphorical elements. The farm as it existed now in the background, rendered with photographic precision. In the foreground, a series of translucent layers showing what had come before the abandoned property. Elara had purchased the family farm of her childhood, and beneath it all the ancient land that had witnessed generations come and go. Threading through these temporal layers were two riders on horseback, a man and a woman, their features indistinct enough to represent both specific and universal journeys. Behind them, barely visible unless you knew to look, a third figure, a young man forging his own path forward. When the painting was finally complete, Ellis helped me hang it in its designated place in the great room. Julian stood back studying it with tears in his eyes. "It's her, isn't it? And you and me." He traced the paths of the riders with his finger from a distance, the past, present, and future of this place. "Legacy," I said simply. "Not what's left behind, but what continues forward." That evening, as I watched the sunset from the porch of what was now truly my home, I felt Elara's presence not as a ghost or memory, but as a continuing partnership. She had given me not just material security, but a framework for reinvention. The freedom to discover who Ethan Sterling might become when unconstrained by circumstance. The oil would provide financial stability for generations. The farm would evolve according to our stewardship, and I would continue bringing beauty into the world through newly rediscovered talents, creating my own legacy alongside the one Elara had so carefully prepared. Tomorrow's video waited on the laptop inside another day of guidance and connection across the boundary that separated us. But increasingly, I found myself looking forward rather than back, grateful for her foresight, but eager to write the next chapters of this unexpected story myself. The forbidden farm had become hallowed ground, not a place of secrets and pain as Elara had once known it, but a sanctuary of possibility, her final and greatest gift to me. Winter descended on Maple Creek Farm with dramatic beauty, pristine snowfall blanketing the rolling pastures, ice crystals forming delicate patterns on the windows, smoke curling from the stone chimney into the crisp Alberta sky. I had decided to stay through the season, rather than return to Minnesota drawn to experience the full cycle of seasons on this land that had become my unexpected home. Julian had reluctantly returned to his life in Minneapolis, his marketing firm unwilling to extend his leave of absence indefinitely. Our daily video ritual continued via FaceTime, the three of us still connected. Julian in his urban apartment, me in the farmhouse living room, and Elara's recorded presence binding us across time and space. The western hills are particularly beautiful after fresh snow, Elara remarked in today's video filmed exactly 1 year ago, in the same room. If Ellis has kept up the maintenance on the snowmobile in the equipment barn, take it out to the ridge overlooking the valley. The view at sunrise is worth the early wake-up call. I smiled at her continuing ability to anticipate my experiences. Just yesterday, Ellis had mentioned the snowmobile and offered to show me the winter trails Elara had mapped out across the property. 6 months had passed since I'd confronted the McIntyre brothers. True to our agreement, they had maintained their distance, though my attorney occasionally forwarded communications from their legal team, technical questions about property boundaries, as Western Plains Energy began preliminary work on the eastern edge of the farm. The oil extraction project was proceeding with deliberate care, the company honoring our unusual arrangement that prioritized environmental protection over rapid profit. Thomas Reeves had become an unexpected ally, his initial business interest evolving into genuine respect for the sustainable approach Elara had envisioned and I had insisted upon. My phone rang, pulling me from these thoughts. Julian's name flashed on the screen. "Everything okay?" I answered immediately, concerned by the unexpected call. Our daily video chat wasn't scheduled for several hours. "I'm not sure," he replied, his voice tense. "I just had a strange visit from Uncle Malcolm." My grip tightened on the phone. Malcolm, what did he want? "Officially, he came to apologize for his role in trying to manipulate me against you." He paused. But something felt off about the whole conversation. He kept asking subtle questions about the farm, whether I visited often, if I'd noticed any unusual activity around the property. "Did you tell him anything?" "Of course not." I kept responses vague and non-committal. His voice lowered. "Dad, I think they're planning something." This felt like reconnaissance. A chill that had nothing to do with the winter temperature ran through me. The McIntyre brothers had been suspiciously quiet these past months. Too quiet, perhaps, for men accustomed to fighting for what they wanted. "I'll alert Ellis and increase security," I assured him, "and I'll have my attorney contact theirs with a reminder about the terms of our agreement." "There's something else," Julian added hesitantly. "Malcolm mentioned that Silas has been ill, some heart condition requiring surgery. He tried to play on my sympathy, suggesting that families should come together in difficult times. The same heart condition that had taken Elara, the genetic hypertrophic cardiomyopathy she'd inherited from her father. I wondered if Silas had hidden his diagnosis from his brothers, just as Elara had concealed hers from us. "Be careful, Julian. This could be legitimate, or it could be another manipulation tactic." "That's what I thought." He sighed. "I hate being suspicious of every interaction with Mom's family. It shouldn't be this way." After ending the call, I walked to the window overlooking the snow-covered driveway, unease settling in my stomach. The McIntyre brothers had proven themselves ruthless and deceptive. Their apparent retreat might simply be strategic regrouping. I called Ellis, immediately relaying Julian's concerns. His response was characteristically calm, but resolute. "I'll alert the security team and check the perimeter surveillance," he assured me. "We installed those systems for exactly this scenario." Another of Elara's precautions, discreet but comprehensive security throughout the property, with cameras monitoring all access points and motion sensors covering the most vulnerable approaches. At the time, I thought it excessive. Now I was grateful for her foresight. That evening, I found myself drawn to the hidden bunker beneath the barn, seeking guidance from Elara's meticulously organized records. If the McIntyre brothers were planning another attempt to claim Maple Creek Farm, perhaps she had anticipated this scenario as well. In the concrete room filled with filing cabinets and maps, I searched for anything related to continued threats post-settlement. In the bottom drawer of Elara's desk, I found a folder labeled simply, "If They Return," in her precise handwriting. Inside was a detailed contingency plan steps to take if her brothers violated the agreement, including pre-drafted legal injunctions, contact information for Canadian authorities who had investigated their past financial dealings, and surprisingly, a sealed letter addressed to Silas McIntyre. A note in Elara's handwriting was paperclipped to the envelope, "A last resort, only deliver if absolutely necessary." What had my wife written to her estranged older brother that she considered so potentially powerful or damaging that it should only be used in extremis? The envelope was sealed, the contents a final mystery Elara had left for me to uncover only if circumstances demanded it. I returned to the main house, the sealed letter secure in my pocket, my mind turning over possibilities and strategies. Outside, gentle snow began falling again, adding another pristine layer to the winter landscape. The next morning, Ellis knocked on my door as I was finishing breakfast. "We have visitors," he announced, his expression grave. "All three McIntyre brothers plus two men I don't recognize." At the gate, he nodded. "They're requesting entry. Silas claims it's a personal family matter not related to the property dispute." I moved to the great room window, which offered a view of the entrance gates in the distance. Two vehicles waited there, the familiar black SUV and a more modest sedan. "What do you think they really want?" I asked Ellis. "Nothing good," he replied bluntly, "but refusing to see them might provoke whatever they're planning. Better to control the encounter on our terms." I considered this, my hand unconsciously touching the letter in my pocket. Have security stay alert, but not visible. Let them approach the main house only, no access to other buildings. As Ellis went to convey these instructions, I called my attorney to inform him of the unexpected visit. Then Julian to warn him that his uncles had appeared at the farm less than 24 hours after Malcolm's casual visit to him. "Do you want me to come?" he asked immediately. "I can be on the next flight." "No," I decided. "Stay where you are. This might be exactly what they want to get both of us here, isolated from our legal support system." Through the window, I watched the gates open, allowing the two vehicles to proceed up the long driveway. Steeling myself, I went to my bedroom to retrieve one additional item Elara had left for precisely this type of confrontation, a small digital recorder, disguised as a decorative lapel pin. Whatever the McIntyre brothers wanted, I intended to have a record of every word. When the doorbell rang, I was waiting in the great room, seated calmly in the armchair, facing the entryway, the recorder pinned to my sweater, the mysterious letter secure in my pocket. Ellis answered the door with professional courtesy, ushering in our unwelcome visitors. Silas entered first, looking noticeably thinner than at our last encounter, his complexion grayish beneath his tan. Asher and Malcolm followed their expressions, carefully neutral. The two strangers brought up the rear, one carrying a medical bag, suggesting he was a physician, the other holding a leather portfolio similar to those favored by legal professionals. "Ethan," Silas nodded in greeting, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. "Thank you for seeing us without an appointment." "Family always seems to arrive unexpectedly," I replied mildly. "Please sit. Ellis, would you bring coffee for our guests?" As they arranged themselves on the sofas opposite my chair, I noted the tension in their postures, the way Asher kept glancing at Silas with poorly concealed concern. Whatever had brought them here, it centered on the eldest McIntyre. "I'll be direct," Silas began once Ellis had departed for the kitchen. "I've been diagnosed with the same heart condition that took Elara, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It runs in the family." So Julian's information had been accurate. I maintained a neutral expression, waiting for him to continue. "My condition is advanced. The specialists give me 6 months, without intervention possibly years, with the right treatment." He gestured to the man with the medical bag. This is Dr. Harmon, my cardiologist, and Mr. Pearson, my personal attorney. I'm sorry to hear about your health challenges, I said carefully, but I'm not clear on why this brings you to Maple Creek Farm. Silas exchanged glances with his brothers before continuing. I need a heart transplant, Ethan, but there's a complication. Our family has a rare blood type and tissue markers that make finding a compatible donor extremely difficult. A creeping suspicion began forming in my mind. That sounds challenging, but again, why come to me with this? Because, Dr. Harmon interjected professionally, based on the medical records we reviewed, your late wife would have been a perfect donor match for Silas. And given the genetic factors involved, there's a significant probability that your son might be compatible as well. The audacity of their request hit me like a physical blow. They wanted to test Julian to use my son's body as a potential source of salvation for the man who had tried to steal his inheritance and turn him against me. You want my son to be tested as a potential donor for you. I clarified, making sure the recorder captured every word of this extraordinary conversation. Just preliminary blood work to check compatibility. Asher jumped in smoothly. Nothing invasive at this stage. And if he matches, I pressed, what then? Then we would hope he might consider becoming a living donor, Silas replied. The procedure allows for partial liver transplantation with minimal risk to the donor. His liver would regenerate completely within months. I sat in stunned silence, marveling at their breathtaking entitlement. After attempting to manipulate, deceive, and defraud us, they now expected my son to undergo major surgery for a man he barely knew, a man who had tried to turn him against his own mother. Let me understand correctly, I said finally, my voice steady despite my internal turmoil. You tried to steal this property from me, attempted to turn my son against me with lies and half-truths, and now you're here asking if he'll undergo surgery to save your life. Silas at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. I understand how this appears, but we're still family, Ethan. Blood connects us whether we choose it or not. Blood, I repeated thoughtfully, remembering Elara's videos, her painful history with these men, her determination to protect Julian and me from their toxic influence. You're right about one thing, Silas. Blood does connect us, but not in the way you think. I withdrew the sealed letter from my pocket, noting the flash of recognition in Silas's eyes. Elara left this for you, I said, holding it just out of his reach, with instructions to deliver it only if absolutely necessary. I believe this qualifies. Silas stared at the sealed envelope in my hand, recognition and apprehension flickering across his drawn features. Elara wrote to me. Apparently, she anticipated that even a legal settlement wouldn't keep you away permanently. I held the letter, making no move to hand it over yet. She prepared for every contingency, including this one. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Dr. Harmon shifted awkwardly, clearly sensing he'd been brought into something more complex than a straightforward medical consultation. The McIntyre brothers exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Before I give you this, I continued, I want absolute clarity about what you're asking. You want my son, the same young man you manipulated and lied to 6 months ago, to undergo medical testing and potentially major surgery to save your life. It sounds callous when you phrase it that way, Asher interjected. But yes, essentially, Silas's condition is grave, and family members provide the best chance for compatible donation. Why not Malcolm or Asher? I asked, looking at the other brothers. Siblings are typically even better matches than nephews. Dr. Harmon cleared his throat. We've tested both Mr. McIntyre's brothers. Neither is compatible due to some unusual genetic factors. And there are no other siblings? I pressed, watching their reactions carefully. No other family members who might be suitable donors. Another significant glance between the brothers. Malcolm looked away, suddenly fascinated by the view through the window. No, Silas replied firmly. No other siblings. I nodded slowly, then handed him Elara's letter. I think you should read this before we continue this conversation." With slightly trembling hands, Silas broke the seal and unfolded the pages inside. His eyes moved across the first few lines, then widened in shock. Color drained from his face as he continued reading the pages, shaking visibly in his grasp. Asher leaned forward. "Silas, what is it?" But Silas didn't respond, completely absorbed in Elara's words. When he finally looked up, his expression had transformed. The confident businessman replaced by a man confronting ghosts he thought long buried. "How long have you known?" he asked me hoarsely. "I only know that Elara left this for you with instructions that it contained information you might need someday." I met his gaze steadily. "What exactly did my wife write?" Silas handed the letter to Asher, who began reading with Malcolm looking over his shoulder. Their expressions shifted in near unison from curiosity to disbelief to something approaching horror. "This can't be true," Asher said finally, looking at Silas. "Father would have told us." "Would he?" Silas laughed bitterly. "The same father who pitted us against each other our entire lives, who played favorites dependent on his mood, who took pleasure in holding secrets over our heads." I watched this exchange with growing curiosity. Whatever Elara had revealed in that letter had clearly shaken the brothers to their core. "Perhaps," I suggested quietly, "someone should tell me what my wife wrote." Silas seemed to remember my presence, his gaze refocusing on me with new awareness. Elara wasn't our half-sister, she was our full sister. This made no sense. "I don't understand." "Elara told me your father remarried after your mother died giving birth to her. That's why there was such an age gap between you." "That was the story we all believed," Silas confirmed. "But according to this letter, Elara discovered the truth while researching her heart condition. Our mother didn't die in childbirth. She left our father when Elara was an infant, unable to tolerate his abusive behavior any longer. Father created the story about her death to avoid the scandal of abandonment and to punish her by erasing her completely." "But that's not all." Asher continued, his legal precision reasserting itself even through his shock. "Elara discovered that our father had another family relationship that began before our mother left and continued for decades after a woman in Saskatoon with whom he had 2 more children. Now I understood the significance. 2 more McIntyre siblings, a brother and sister, both in their 40s now." Silas confirmed, scanning the letter again. "Both sharing our rare blood type and genetic markers according to medical records Elara somehow obtained and likely unaware of their connection to you." I surmised the pieces falling into place. "Elara found them but didn't contact them, did she? She simply confirmed their existence and medical compatibility." Silas nodded slowly. "According to this, she even had their contact information verified annually through a private investigator, ensuring it remained current. In case one of you ever needed what you're asking of Julian now, I finished for him. A compatible donor from family you never acknowledged." The irony was breathtaking. The McIntyre brothers had come to ask my son, the nephew they had tried to manipulate and defraud, for potentially life-saving organ donation, while completely unknown siblings existed who might provide the same medical match. "There's more," Malcolm said quietly, having taken the letter from Asher. "Elara writes that she only discovered all this after her own diagnosis. She was already planning Maple Creek Farm for you, Ethan. But learning about these other siblings solidified her resolve to break completely from the McIntyre family legacy of secrets and manipulation. She writes that she wanted to create something honest and transparent, to leave behind something built on love rather than obligation." Tears pricked at my eyes as I recognized my wife's values in those words. Even from beyond the grave, she was teaching all of us about integrity and truth. "So," I said finally, "it seems you have alternatives to approaching my son, 2 half-siblings who share your medical markers." "Strangers," Silas protested weakly. "We don't even know these people." "And whose fault is that I countered the voice of an African-American man who understood the historical pain of broken family trees. Your father chose to keep them secret. You and your brothers chose to treat Elara as less worthy than yourselves. Now you face the consequences of those choices. Dr. Harmon cleared his throat again. Forgive me, but from a medical perspective, any potential donor should be contacted quickly. Mr. McIntyre's condition is deteriorating rapidly. I considered the man before me, Silas McIntyre, once powerful and intimidating, now diminished by illness and the collapse of his family mythology. Despite everything he had done, I couldn't find satisfaction in his suffering. Elara wouldn't have wanted that. The contact information for your half-siblings, I said. Is it included in the letter? Silas nodded mutely. Then I suggest you begin there, I told him. Not with demands, but with humility and truth. Tell them who you are. Explain your medical situation and give them the choice that should be theirs to make. Just as such a choice would be Julian's alone, not mine, not yours, if you had approached him with honesty from the beginning. And if they refuse, Asher asked, then Julian can decide for himself if he wishes to be tested, I replied. But he'll make that decision with complete knowledge of all facts and alternatives. No manipulation, no pressure, no lies. The McIntyre brothers absorbed this in silence, the family resemblance between them and my late wife suddenly more apparent in their chastened expressions. Elara had had their same strong jawline, the same deep-set eyes features I now noticed with new clarity. We'll go, Silas said, finally rising with effort from the sofa. Thank you for this. He gestured to the letter which Malcolm carefully folded and returned to the envelope. As Ellis showed them out, I remained seated, processing the unexpected revelation and its implications. Elara had known she had other siblings, family members, who might have welcomed her, who shared her biological heritage. Yet she had chosen to keep that knowledge in reserve, using it only as protection for Julian and me after she was gone. That evening, as snow fell gently outside the windows of Maple Creek Farm, I opened the laptop for the day's video from Elara. Her familiar face appeared on the screen, recorded exactly a year ago, in this very room. Hello, my love, she began, her smile warming me across time. If I've calculated correctly, today might be the day my brothers finally play their medical card. They've known about my condition for years. Our father made sure to inform them when I was first diagnosed as a teenager, though they never offered help. I gasped softly once again, astonished by her foresight. If they've approached you or Julian about donation compatibility, then you've given them the letter about our other siblings. Her expression grew thoughtful. I considered contacting them myself many times over the years, but their lives were established, their family complete. I questioned my right to disrupt that with ancient history and biological connections that might mean nothing to them. She leaned closer to the camera. The truth is, Ethan family isn't about blood. It's about choice. I chose you and Julian as my family. I hope whoever Silas and the others approach will be allowed the same freedom of choice to help or not to connect, or not without manipulation or obligation. As the video continued, Elara sharing her thoughts on family and legacy. With characteristic thoughtfulness, I felt a sense of completion settling over me. The McIntyre brothers had come seeking to use Julian as a means to an end, just as they had always used Elara. Instead, they had been forced to confront the tangled web of secrets their father had woven and the consequences of their own choices. Whether they would reach out to their newly discovered siblings with genuine openness, or the same manipulative tactics they'd always employed remained to be seen, but that was no longer my concern, or Elara's, or Julian's. We had broken free of the toxic McIntyre family dynamics, claiming our own legacy through Maple Creek Farm and the life we were building here. Elara had transformed her childhood prison into my sanctuary, her painful past into my promising future. The forbidden farm had become hallowed ground indeed, not because of the oil beneath its soil or the financial security it provided, but because it represented Elara's final triumph over the family that had rejected her and the lasting love that had sustained her. Spring would come again to Maple Creek Farm. The horses would run in green pastures. Oil would be carefully extracted from the western hills, and I would continue my archival research in the studio my wife had designed. Julian would visit when he could, perhaps bringing children of his own someday to ride horses and explore the land their African-American father had reclaimed, and Elara would remain present in the legacy she had so carefully crafted. Not just in the daily videos that would eventually end, but in every corner of this place that reflected her love, her foresight, and her determination that the mistakes of the past would not dictate the shape of the future. The forbidden had become the cherished. The secret had become the celebrated. And I, Ethan Sterling, had become the caretaker of a legacy built not on obligation or blood, but on the purest foundation of all love, freely given and gratefully received. "Until tomorrow, my love," Elara said as the day's video concluded. "Until tomorrow," I whispered back, knowing that while tomorrow would bring a new video, a new message from the past, it would also bring me one day closer to the future I was now creating. Inspired by her example, but shaped by my own emerging strength, the legacy of Maple Creek Farm continued, no longer forbidden, but forever transformed.